Welcome to the MMHP989, podcasting from the Michigan Rock Legends Hall of Fame in downtown Bay City, channeling all styles and eras of Michigan music history from the city by the bay. And now, Dr. J, Sir Fred, Mr. Mike, and your host, Scott Baker.
163. Here we are in the early March of 2023, coming through the triple hammering of the Snowfest, which should commence tomorrow night for part 3. And Dr. J's in the house. How you doing, Doc?
Very good.
What's new?
Still working on the Hall of Fame displays at the exhibit at the Historical Museum of Bay County. I know this won't be broadcast in time, but a couple interesting things going on March 31st. We've got the Madonna 40 Festival at the Delta Planetarium, which is really going to be cool. And also the Delta Planetarium is it's got a brand new presentation called Pink Floyd Dark Side of the Moon program, new visuals, and I got a sneak peek when we were planning the Madonna 40 Festival, and it's pretty impressive. Full dome visuals.
50th anniversary.
Whoa, yeah, it was pretty psychedelic, at least the one number that I saw. So,
well, we'll definitely be
encouraging people to go see that, support the support the Delta Planetarium. They do all kinds of great things there. The sound system in there is state of the art. It's really nice.
Awesome. Sir Fred, how you doing?
Doing good.
What's new this week?
Well, not a whole lot. I found a little over 100 jazz CDs.
Where at?
I don't like to reveal my sources.
So you found them, or you got?
Well, I bought them.
Okay.
At a thrift shop.
Oh, okay. So you found them. You had come across them.
And most of them were not. They were still sealed.
Oh my goodness.
And they're all BMG Record Club.
There you go. Somebody had a collection.
And they all were like reissues of classic jazz albums. You know, Miles Davis, John Coltrane, Sonny Stitt, whoever.
Ooh. I need those doubles of yours of Sonny Stitt, that's for sure.
Yeah.
It'll be like, nope, I'm going to put them on eBay and sell them. Sorry, dude. Well, that's a good score. I'm glad you're still coming across some gems.
So it's taken away my time working on my book, if that was the next question.
Yeah, well, you already know. We're looking forward to that book. How you doing, Mike Beatty?
I'm doing good.
Mr. Mike in the house doing the taping and the audio, and you got it figured out how to give us some clips now. How's that feel?
Yeah, well, I'm still on the learning curve.
Yeah, well, that's nice, though. We got some. We can actually use our archives now.
Yep, exactly.
So that's a beautiful thing. Well, we have a very special guest in the house today. Gary lined this one up for us, and this guy is a mid-Michigan gem. He's been around for quite a long time, and he's got some stories to share. And before we dive into the pre-show mortality tales that we've been sharing here, I want to introduce everybody. Mr. John Hebert, how you doing?
Good, I'm good. How are you, Scott?
I'm doing fine. I'm feeling good, man. We're getting ready to have a nice year. I think after this snowstorm gets away here and we get going into spring, everybody's going to take that fresh breath of air and try to enjoy the rest of the season.
I plan on that too. I mean, I'm a boater, and that's kind of what I want to get back out to my boating.
I see bookings are coming. All the announcements are coming. It's going to be for us musicians. It's going to be a heck of a year. So.
Yeah, it is. We're getting a lot of bookings lined up right now with Soul Express. That's who I'm currently playing with, and it's always a fun time with these guys.
Oh man,
different bunch of guys.
Yeah.
So.
You got Steve playing drums once in a while too, eh?
Steve is with us permanently.
Permanently?
Pretty much. Yeah. He's kind of had to give up with Larry because of some health issues. Mm-hmm. And so he's kind of been playing with us permanently. He has a lot of good vocals to the band.
Yeah.
And then he fits in tight with Corey Ingram, who's played bass with Larry and Steve anyway.
Yeah.
So we've got a real good rhythm section now. And then we've added two young guys to the band from Saginaw Valley, two new horn players that are phenomenal.
Oh yeah.
And they're music majors, and we practiced with them, and they picked up material that they have never heard before very fast. And I had asked them, for example, have you heard Knock on Wood? And the song's 35 years old, and they're 25.
Yeah.
So, obviously they hadn't. So they made a comment, it's kind of nice to be playing with guys that are like their dads. I said, or like your grandpas. But anyway, Soul Express is going to be doing good this summer.
Wow.
We hope.
You guys got Swift too, right?
Yeah, we've got Swiv on keys, so I've been around
Is
with
Tony
him.
still the singer?
Tony has started singing with us again just because Lavelle Jackson has been doing some of his own stuff on the side. So he's been, in fact, Lavelle was just in Africa doing some shows with Eddie Camerton, and they were doing, I think it was a Temptation Review type thing over there. So Lavelle is going to do some with us, but he's got other things that he's working on as well, his own CD release as well.
It's amazing you guys have talent, and when someone has to step out, more talent steps in, and it's a revolving door of all stars.
Exactly. And like, for example, next week on the 16th, I'm going to be gone. But Scotty Vandell is going to fill in, and Scotty's a great guy too, and a great player. So
awesome.
As you said, we've got a lot of bench people that are always out there available. And that's one thing great about this area is that we do have so many good musicians around here.
I was at a record release party on Saturday at the State there, and it's the first three people come to me. They're like, "This area is just unbelievable." It was two ladies, that had one had their release party, the other one recently had hers there, and it was like, "Oh my gosh, man, it's never ending." I mean, the quality and the it's just a backlog for years. I mean, this goes way back. I mean, that's why we have the show. It's just, and a lot of it stems from our area, the mid-Michigan area. It's amazing that how we've branched from here into Detroit, into Grand Rapids, into Lansing, Ann Arbor, Kalamazoo. We got North Cats, but mid-Michigan, man, we have a stronghold. What a base. But no, that's cool, man. Soul Express is going to be out and about. That's like an endeavor that people come to see, which is really cool.
Yeah, we enjoy it. It's a fun band. I'm more blues rock oriented, but this band is just, it's great for dynamics, the horns, the workouts, the old songs, the Earth, Wind, and Fire, and all that stuff. It's a lot of fun work, and plus all the vocal work that we do. You got 8 guys in the band, so there's a lot of mouths to feed. So, and in the course of last summer, I did fill in a lot with Bluesmobile.
Oh yeah,
too, because they had some issues going on. So I was pretty busy last summer. Every weekend was pretty much booked up. And
my summer was busy last year too. It looks like it's going to be this year. It's starting to really come on like gangbusters right now.
That's a good thing after the pandemic. It definitely is.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. And Gary wants to. He's got some questions. He told me he wanted to start out with today.
Well, I thought,
kick us into the Wayback Machine.
John's kind of filled in what's going on in his musical life right now, but we like to explore going in the Wayback Machine. Like. What was it, Dr. Peabody? And I can't remember the dog's name. What was that? They used to go back in time. And Bullwinkle and
oh my God! Yeah. We're going back into the cave.
Yeah, we are. We're going back into those days. Well, anyways, John and I go back a long way because I was his family's paper boy for 4 years. So, that ran from about 1960 through 64. And so I really didn't, I knew who you were, but of course we considered you one of the little kids, back then.
You guys are the big guys that took care of us.
Right. So anyways, when did you, I know your dad was into music.
Yeah.
When did you really get started in it? How old were you when you really started maybe getting some of your own records and so on?
Okay, what my first exposure to music was in the first grade at St. Joe's. I played trumpet. I learned trumpet. I read trumpet music. And of course, what happened in that era, as I got to be 13 and 14, the Beatles came and destroyed us all as far as where our direction should have been for music. So I obviously at 14 wanted to be like Paul McCartney, and I wanted to be a bass guitar player. And what happened with that situation is that my parents for Christmas got me a 6-string acoustic guitar. Because my mother said, God bless her and God rest her soul, she was great in music as well. She said, you can't play bass guitar around a campfire, but you can play 6-string and it made good logic. So obviously, I played guitar. And I actually started playing in my first bands around 14 or 15, and that was with Sheperd and the Flock.
Well, where did you take lessons on the guitar?
No, I didn't. I could read music, and the story, actually, what it was with guitar, it was more by ear, even though I could read music. I did learn notation as I went along. As I said, I could play trumpet, which was in the key of B flat. But guitar came along, and my ear was there to learn and to learn chording. And I had a few chord books, and I learned at that point and listened to records constantly and tried to mimic those people, those records, those sounds. Learned my chords, learned my open chords, learned my bar chords. And since then, I've just lost track. Everything has progressed.
What record really set things off for you?
Meet the Beatles. Meet the Beatles. I think that's got to be a standard for a lot of musicians.
Right.
And I do remember that, and in conjunction with the Ed Sullivan Show when they came on. I think that turned so many people's heads as far as music at our age, to inspire people. So what it was, I guess, the hype of the fans and the music and the excitement of a new quality of music. So that was my first album that really inspired me. That and a little bit of the Beach Boys. A little bit of the Beach Boys.
Well, they were gigantic, at that time.
Exactly.
As far as American group that could stand up to the British invasion, that was certainly the Beach Boys.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and then maybe the Four Seasons as well.
Yeah.
Those probably the big two that kind of survived the onslaught of all those British bands. So you mentioned Sheperd and the Flock. Did this occur when you moved on to All Saints, or did this start at St. Joe's?
That was at St. Joe's. I was the youngest member of that band. I think I was 15. The other guys were 17 and 18. So I was like the baby of those guys.
Who else was in the band?
Randy Thompson was in the band. He's currently living up in East Jordan. Dave Shorkey was our drummer, and Dave actually played on and off with Dick Wagner and the Bossmen. He would fill in when their drummer couldn't make it. Steve Gable, who's now living out on the West Coast somewhere, was our lead guitar player. And then we had a lead singer named Bob Sokovy.
I knew Bob.
And you probably knew Bob.
Sure.
And it was kind of a political move with Bob because he was one of the most popular kids at Central High School. And we were getting ready to do the Battle of the Bands at Roll Air Rink, so we thought votes were important.
And you're right.
And we were right.
Oh, yes.
As it is. So Bob was our lead singer through that escapade, and that's how Sheperd and the Flock got started.
Well, to kind of take us through, the whole thing with the Battle of the Bands at Roll Air, that was such a pivotal time, in our area. And, to think today that you could have 2,000 kids crammed into one spot and really have very little trouble. There was almost no incidents of fights or anything like that within Roll Air anyway. Right. And everybody out there for the music on those Tuesday nights, it was the place to be.
Right.
Not only in Bay City, but probably in a 25 or 30 mile radius around Bay City. So kind of, if you would, to kind of take us through how that happened. How did you audition or sign up, or what? Do you remember what the procedure was?
Actually, from what I remembered, it was an open. You would sign up with. It was Bob Dyer and Dick Fabian that ran that from WKNX radio, AM radio. Of course, AM radio was the radio.
Oh, sure, everybody listened to AM
at that time. So we signed up, got selected, and then you would start in the rounds, and you would go against two or three other bands every week, and then there would be a headliner there, for example, like Scott Richard Case or Dick Wagner, or just different large groups from Michigan itself in general. And as you went each round, you would run and go to the next round, and you would keep competing. And in fact, I do remember one great incident in that situation, because I was a paper boy as well, and I bought my own very first guitar with my money and my very first Bandmaster amp from Herder Music with my money that I'd saved. And at that time, $300 or $400 was a lot of money for a kid that, just working a paper route. And I was so excited on our second round that I got to use my brand new amp, the Fender bass or Fender Bandmaster, and Dick Wagner was on the same stage, and his amp had blown up. So he said, "Can I use your amp?" And I said, "Well, yeah." And the first thing he did is take all the knobs and put them on 10.
Really?
Full blast. Because everything, he ran whack was his controls from the guitar. And as a kid, I'm thinking he's gonna break my stuff. I was really nervous and upset. Obviously, things were fine. And that was one of the rounds that definitely stayed with me. But obviously, as it went on, it went through most of the summer, and then we made it to the final rounds and did end up being runner-up for that year. We did end up being runner-up.
Do you remember who won?
No, I don't, Gary. I don't remember. I was trying to find out, and I couldn't remember who won. We were runner-up, and we got a custom PA system, and we got money, and then we got guaranteed bookings at places like the Blue Light and the Band Canyon and all the places in the area where, that was part of our prize to play at all these different places. So it was a great experience for me as a kid at that age. You can only imagine hanging around with all these guys that, for example, Scott Richard Case using Super Beatles and Les Pauls and stuff, that the equipment that I had never had a chance to even play or touch or see, and get to hear all this music. And
what year was that?
That had to be in 1966, I'm thinking, 66. 67, maybe 67. But as I said,
you would have probably known the guys that won in 66.
Yeah.
The Intruders. They were from Central.
Yeah. So it had to be 67. I think it was the following year.
And that's, that one shift would have been bringing in the headliners, because I don't think that occurred on the earlier years of the...
Possibly.
Yeah, I think 67 might have been the first year.
Right.
And then you started seeing them doing the Super Tuesdays a little while later, which would bring more of those bands from around Michigan in.
Right.
So then you're pretty young, though, at this point. Actually, you were probably too young to get into some of these clubs like Daniel's Den.
Right.
So how did you swing that?
We just, the guys
didn't say anything.
They didn't say anything. It was kind of like I waited out in the car until everything got set in, and then when everybody got busy, I just kind of walked in and did my job, what I was supposed to do. But I was such a small guy. I mean, somebody had to know that I didn't fit in at that point in time. But it just happened, and it was a good experience.
Well, I'm sure. And all those places are really pretty cool for bands. I mean, you played at Daniel's Den, right?
Yeah, played at Daniel's Den.
And that must, the one thing that everybody always remembers about Daniel's Den, and the people I've talked to, were the big velvet curtains that opened up, once you started your set.
Right.
That's kind of a big time setup there that a lot of teen clubs didn't have that.
Yeah, I know. It was amazing. And, as a kid, 15, 16 years old, you're seeing all this stuff and you think, I'm on the way to be a Beatle. I mean, you were thinking this is what you wanted a 6-string guitar for, and it was a great experience. It was priceless.
Yeah, I'll bet.
It's just priceless.
Was there a big name act the night that you played there? I mean, because they did book some pretty big name people.
The day we played there, there wasn't, but I think the week after, Sonny and Cher played there, I believe.
Okay.
So they, as you're correct, Gary, they did get some pretty big names.
Yeah, you could go down the list.
Right.
Even some bands like the Yardbirds played there.
Exactly.
And the Tremolos, who had some pretty big hits.
Right.
Not to mention all the American bands that had top 40 singles out at the time.
Right.
What do you remember about the Blue Light? That one was a little later on when they opened up.
Yeah, that was out in Cairo, I think.
No, Midland. The Blue Light was in Midland.
Okay, I'm trying to think. There was one out in Cairo, too, that we played at. I can't remember.
I'm trying to think. Was that 007?
I don't know.
I'm not sure about the one in Cairo.
Yeah, I don't remember a lot about those places other than the fact that I had written down on a log that we had played at those places as a young kid, and I kind of kept that stuff.
Well, that's, a lot of people didn't do that.
Yeah, I tried to do what and my mother kind of said, "Why don't you write a lot of this stuff down?" Which I did in my own type of diary and stuff for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I wish, like for example, Rollaire would have kept track of that. In fact, they even had a lot of photographs of bands receiving the their trophies or whatever, winning either a round or a championship, and no one bothered to even put the name of the band on the back of the photo.
Right.
So over time, I mean, you've got these photos, have no idea who these bands were, that played there and won. That's really too bad. Do you remember very much about the Blue Light?
Not very much. No, not.
Yeah. Did Daniels Den did they use the? Well, Fred, you probably know too. Did they use the upstairs? The balcony at all?
Daniels Den?
Did they have a balcony? I know it.
Yeah, they had a balcony.
They had a balcony. Yeah.
I don't remember.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
I don't remember either. I don't even remember how packed it was the time that we did play there. In fact, we might have played more than once. I'm not even sure with that.
Well, it's over 50 plus years.
Yeah.
I know. It's a
Yeah, we're going with you say the Wayback Machine.
Yeah, this is deep.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, how about Band Canyon? What do you remember about that? Boy, that was a hot spot for a few years.
Well, obviously, and Sheperd and the Flock used to play there, and it wasn't a lot, but we did get routine bookings in there.
I think I saw you there.
Yeah,
I remember the name Sheperd and the Flock.
Yeah, we used to play there. In fact, we did. We played there, and through one of the major things that Gary and I have talked about.
Yeah, we'll bring that up a little bit later.
I figured you help I have that a little bit later when it turned into a different situation. But at Sheperd and the Flock, we played a lot of those places, and we did our share of private parties as well. So that group, I'm trying to think, how long was I in that group? It had to be at least 4 or 5 years, because I did go away to college, and of course I would have had to have less. But before I went to college, there was a group that Randy Thompson and I got on called BW Shack, which was a half black, half white group. We did a lot of Sly and the Family Stone and that kind of stuff too.
Okay.
So, but Sheperd and the Flock was my major group that really got me going in my musical career, I have to say.
What about the name? Do you have any remembrance about how he came up with the name Sheperd and the Flock?
No, I really don't know. Other than the fact that we had a lead singer, and hence the word Shepherd, and the Flock sounded. So everybody had something in the.
Well, there was a local group, the Shepherds.
Yeah, that was an outgrowth of the Delrays.
Right.
Yeah, no, I don't think that had anything to do with it. Like I said, as a young kid, I was more or less just there for the ride, and these guys made all these decisions as we went along, So, boy, it was that brings back some memories.
Do you remember what kind of pay the band would get back in those days?
Maybe $15-$20 at
a piece
at the most.
Yeah.
And it was, that was considered a lot of money for me as a kid.
Oh, sure.
If you had to shovel snow all week long, it was like 10 driveways.
Right. Or more than you could make on your paper route.
Exactly. So that was big time money, And for me, even to this day, my pay has always gone back into my stuff. All my equipment that I have is just directly because of what I made in bands and stuff. So it's just kind of a personal thing. That's what I like to do.
Well, sure.
Reinvest it.
Well, this probably brings us to, let's see, it would be the fall of 1968.
Yeah.
And at that point, it wasn't really, Band Canyon had changed its name, hadn't it? Or was it still Band Canyon then?
I think it was still Band Canyon, but
they definitely had changed to ownership.
Ownership, yes, at that point.
Yes. Do you remember who might have run that particular party that night? Because they were renting out the hall.
Right. It was two guys from Delta College, a Delta fraternity, I believe, that had set this party up.
And I remember a name that keeps coming to mind to me is Brian Campo.
Could have been. It sounds very, very possible.
But we're talking a long time ago,
right.
And I'm not sure about that. I haven't seen Brian in I don't know, 30 years. So I don't know. I don't know if he's still around. I'd love to talk to him about that again.
Just see if he was.
Yeah. So when you got this gig, tell me about it from a, the musician's angle. Did you think it was going to be anything different? Or?
No, we knew. I knew. In fact, I didn't tell my parents because of what was going. Because what it was a party that they had thrown on, and they were charging money, and they had kegs of beer.
A kegger.
It was a kegger, the old-fashioned kegger. And I knew what it was, but Mom and Dad didn't need to know at my age, obviously.
Oh, sure.
So it was just another job. And, I didn't think anything of it, We played, and the place was packed.
Oh, yes.
It was, in fact, you were there?
Well, we came, and I came to see your band.
Okay.
And I brought, you remember Tim Lavasser.
Yes.
And we brought our girlfriends who later became our wives. And, being a young teacher, I think one of the kids in one of my classes brought it up. And, and talked about it, and told me about that Sheperd The Flock was playing. I said, well, yeah, I know John Hebert is in the band. And so I said, you don't know how this is going to come back. Because, I might show up there and I'd like to see John's band. So we came, and I saw that they were serving kids beer. And I mean, definitely these kids were way under 21.
Yeah.
And we watched, I think, your opening song or two, and we said, we're going to head down to the spinning wheel. And, Tim and I were both playing ball there. And so we spent the night there playing shuffleboard and so on. And it was getting a little late. And I was thinking, we didn't really get to see Sheperd The Flock very much. Let's go back.
Oh, you did go back.
Oh, yeah. And talk about bad timing. We no longer walked in the door, and it was just like, here come the state police.
Oh, my God.
And not only the state police, but the justices of the peace following him in. And it was all planned, tables set up, and everybody was charged with frequenting an illegal drinking establishment.
Well, you had to understand the fear I had, because it was like close to midnight, maybe our third set. And I'm on stage knowing what is going on and see police coming in. And there's mass chaos. People are jumping through windows and trying to get out of there. It was like, and I knew, I said, I'm in trouble, Mom and Dad. I wasn't worried about the police. I was worried about Mom and Dad. So that was the farthest thing from my mind. So we were playing, and the police came up and told us to stop playing. That was my first real encounter with the police. At that age, you can only imagine a 16-year-old or 15-year-old what's going through your head at this point in time. Well, I thought, I was a Beatle, now I'm going to be a convict, obviously. so
turned around pretty quick.
My whole career was gone in 30 seconds. So
holding up a little card in front of you.
It was my number, my mugshot. So I know we had to stop playing. And I do remember the guys in the band said, well, don't worry about anything. We'll get out, because we knew nothing about it. And I thought, yes, we did. So long story short, they started processing people, as you said, with the justice of the peace. To my knowledge, from what I remember, at that time, historically, this was the last hurrah of the justices of the.
They were going out of business the following day.
Exactly, the following day.
So it was all set up.
It was it was a money making thing. I mean, as if we had politics back then.
Right.
Too. Wow. So they were processing kids through, and the band, of course, is concerned about what are we going to do. And the policeman said, you can't leave until you get your equipment out of here, and you can't get your equipment out until you're the last ones out. So we had to be the last ones out.
Yeah.
So we sat, which seemed like an eternity. Probably was an hour or two at least.
Well, yeah, kids had to call their parents to come and get them. For the money.
For the money, because kids didn't have the money.
Well, right.
And so I remember we were the last ones, and this is a funny story because we were the last ones, and Selby Hargett at the time was in the band. And Selby was new to the band, and he was kind of like didn't really know what was going on. And he was the first one in line of the band. And we didn't really know what was going on as far as how you pled, what you pled, what happened, because we had not been privy to see what was going on. And we got up in line, and Selby said, well, they want me to plead guilty or not guilty. And we said, well, plead not guilty. You didn't know what's going on. So he pleaded not guilty, and they put handcuffs on it and put him in a cruiser. So we knew our plea was going to be guilty because we had to work better than what poor Selby was our guinea pig.
Well, yeah, the same thing happened to us. Tim Levasseur had a little bit of a temper, and of course, since we were 21, we weren't underage, and Tim put up quite a beef. He would not plead guilty. He spent the night in jail.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, that's what they were doing, and that's what happened to Selby.
After I saw that, I pleaded guilty.
You were like us. So because it was a $5 fee that they charged you pleading guilty, so it was like a ticket that they just collected money.
Yeah.
Wow. And I was in a situation where I didn't have the cash, so my dad had to come out there. Now, my dad, you knew my dad.
Oh, yes.
And he worked in the insurance business, but he knew a lot of the legalities going on. And he had an attorney that worked for him, worked in his company. So he played the five, and he was really mad. My dad was really, he was really upset. The long story, I didn't tell him what was going on, and, normal kid to dad thing and stuff. But the next morning, he was so mad, he contacted his company's attorney. And the attorney said, that's totally illegal. So my dad, I do remember, went down to the courthouse and complaining. They just gave him back the $5 because they knew the whole thing was such a washout.
Wow.
So it was, talk about politics. I'm telling you, it was, it was really something. And what a mess to have the state police involved. And these JPs had card tables set up in the lobby.
There were, I think they processed somewhere between 250 and 300 kids.
Oh, it had to be because it was that packed in there.
Yeah.
So that was the last fiasco of the Band Canyon. One of my last big remembrances of Sheperd and the Flock.
Yeah.
Because I think after that, things kind of took
they went downhill, but the worst part was, I think maybe a year or two later, they had a shooting there, and 2 people were killed.
That's right.
And this was was that a wedding or a birthday party or something? It was 2 adults, it wasn't kids. So I want to write about the Big Band Canyon bust, of course, and and also try to dig up the information about that shooting. But I was student teaching at the time at Bay City Central. So, of course, one of the kids in one of my classes mentioned that Mr. Johnson was going to this party. It was a big headline story in the Bay City Times. So, the following Monday, this is my last week at Central, I think my student teaching experience, the word got to the administration office that this teacher, Mr. Johnson, was at the at this party or a beer party at Band Canyon. Well, come to find out, Dave Johnson was a teacher at Bay City Central. And Paul Grine, who was the assistant principal, the big hammer at Central, when he heard, he didn't know me from a hill of beans, I was a student teacher. He thought it was Dave Johnson, the regular teacher at Central. So poor Dave Johnson comes down to the office and just gets ripped upside and down about the bad publicity of having a teacher, and he didn't even know what was going on. So anyways, 2 or 3 days later, Grine figures out that there's a student teacher named Johnson at the Central High. So I get called down to the office expecting the absolute worst, like you get an evaluation for student teaching, and it was a good experience up until that day. But come to find out, Grine was so embarrassed for what he had done to Dave Johnson, the teacher, that I got like a little maybe tap on the wrist and the warning, they used to get in your education classes at Central Michigan University: don't drink in the town where you teach. Go to another town outside. And this was actually in the education classes.
Wow.
And so, boy, I was really in full violation here.
Because you were in your own town.
Yeah. And, but I got away pretty pretty. I guess you could say with very little repercussions on that one. Wow. But I would have liked to have been a fly on the wall for that when he brought Dave Johnson, the real teacher, down there. Yeah. I heard that,
and he knew nothing about.
Yeah, right. Wow. So, anyways, this is pretty close to when you're. Well, you're still in high school at this point, though.
Yeah,
right?
I was in high school. I graduated in '70, so it would be 2 years before I was going to graduate. I think what did you say? It was '68?
Yeah, it was the fall of '68 when that happened.
So yeah, I was just a junior, and that would have been at All Saints at that point in time. So I don't remember how my classmates react. I knew the nuns would have been upset, but I didn't really worry about that.
Yeah, probably didn't mention that in class.
So that's something that you didn't.
But that's the time where the teen clubs started to fade out.
Exactly.
So where did you guys gig at that point? Did you play like school dances and
we did school.
Like
yeah, we did play some school dances. I played as earlier bands and school dances at the old St. James. Remember the old St. James auditorium there with some bands and stuff that I was in. And I don't know. It kind of gets foggy in there because I was in and out of different garage. We had so many garage bands in the area that we knew different people and we'd played in. And up to that point, I did go to Delta for a term, and then I transferred to the University of Michigan, where then I lost track with a lot of the local guys. But I found new people down in Ann Arbor that I played with in garage band, mostly blues bands. I found a lot of cats that played the blues down in Ann Arbor, so I was able to do that for a while, and then moved back to this area, and then a whole new era of me playing started out again with different bands.
That going to a blues band down there, what was your feels doing that? Like that had to be your first experience changing it up from the Beatlesque style playing.
Yes, Scott, it was, and I tell you what, we used to go to a club, and I can't remember the name of the club, but I knew this guy from New York that he and I would go out to these clubs, and he said, we got to go see this one band. They're called Sky King, and it was Dave Brubeck's son played in the band.
Mad Cat was the harmonica player.
They had one hell of a band. I mean, they had electric violin. These guys were way ahead of their time, and they
just had somewhat of a reunion.
Did they really?
Not too long ago.
Yeah, so I got to see those guys, and I ran into... which really started me into the blues era down there. There was some at that time, I mean, you're 20, there were some 50, 60-year-old black dudes down there.
What year are you talking about? Because that's when 72. I used to book.
72.
Yeah,
72.
Exactly.
Yeah, 1972.
I booked Boogie Woogie Red at the Blind Pig for 12 years. He was there every Monday.
Okay.
Lightning Slim, Washboard Willie.
Well, I met a lot
Baby
of these.
Boy Warren.
I met these guys, and then on weekends when I wasn't going to a football game or something, we'd go over to this garage and we'd just jam the blues. A bunch of guys that I'd hang with and learn. So that kind of kept me going through college until I graduated and moved back into the area and got hooked up back with some musicians in the area. I played in wedding bands, and I played with Don Buchanan's orchestra.
Wow, Don Buchanan.
So, and that's how I got to meet Rick Buchanan. Then I got into a band called Poor Richard's Army, which was a horn band, and we did a lot of Blood, Sweat, and Tear covers and Chicago covers and things of that nature.
So you're playing in bars now?
Now we're doing the bar scene a little bit more. More bar scenes, more pop.
Do you remember some of the bars that... I mean, there was so much live music back in those days.
Well, the Sandbar obviously was big for all of us.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, I tell you, we just did maybe a year ago, a show in there with Soul Express, and I remember talking to Swivel, and he said this place used to seem bigger when we were setting up our equipment, and I said to him, because our equipment was smaller back then. So we did do a lot of local bars of that nature. Then I finally started my own little wedding band and used Swivel's younger brother, Dave, on drums, and we had this band going for quite some time. And that went on and stuff, and then I got invited to be with the McCray Brothers. And at that point in time, Larry was working at the Foundry and couldn't make it the gigs until like 11 o'clock. So Larry had called me, and he said, would you fill in? I've heard you play. You can, just fill in until I get there. And I'll introduce you to my brother Steve, Carl, Tony, Purifoy, a lot of those guys. And so I started playing with them, and then Larry would show up, and he'd say, well, why don't you just stay, because you and I can play together the rest of the night. So that was a fun thing to do.
Oh, yeah.
So that's how I kind of got involved in the Saginaw, the McCray situation. And then Larry left to do his thing, his recording stuff that he did with Ambition was one of his first albums that he came out. In fact, he was still playing Strats back then. That's how long ago that was. Mm-hmm. And they wanted to keep the band going, so Dan Lewandowski suggested, why don't we change it to the Carl McCray Band, which was Carl, the bass player, was our bass player, and we used his name. And we had the Lewandowski brothers playing sax, and I played lead guitar. And John Olson was our drummer at that time. And Tony was singing. So we did clubs after club. We were busy. I mean, we did O'Hare's every Thursday night and every other weekend. And we were booked every Friday and Saturday all year long. We were booked constantly. Traverse City, all over the place. Mackinac Island, French Outpost, we played up there.
Who booked for you guys?
Dan Lewandowski, our horn player, took care of all the bookings. In fact, he still is with Soul Express right now, taking care of all that stuff.
Did you guys play the Arlington?
Arlington was with KMJ Band.
Oh, okay.
That was with Vinny and Mark Nearing.
Right.
And we did Arlington a lot. That was our big show there with the KMJ Band.
That was really a good venue, I thought. It was a real good venue to see a band.
And we
good sound in there.
And we were classic rock. I mean, so I went from Carl McCray Band after about 9 years into the KMJ Band, which was classic rock. So it was a whole different challenge.
What year was that?
Well, I'm going to say.
Well, the McCray Band was 87.
Yeah.
Because I used to book them.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. My daughter, Trisha, was about 2 years old. We used to practice in her garage. So it would have been 88 when I started, or 80, no, excuse me, KMJ Band would have been around 90 or 91 when I started working with them. And I played with them quite a few years.
Did you go back and forth between the two bands? Or?
No, I had left for about a year.
Okay.
I wasn't playing. I took about a year off and just worked on, my own stuff. And got involved. Vinny had saw me at a Garber football game. And he said, let's get this. You want to join our band? Blah, blah. We got great guys. And it's classic rock. And I said, yeah, it sounds like a fun thing to do.
Were you in that concert with Wayne Bennett?
No.
It's a long story. But
Yeah. I know the story about that show. Is that when you went around town to all Daniel's Den or Lion's Den, I mean?
No, but after that, I booked them for a show with the McCray Brothers at a club in Saginaw. Mm-hmm. So Wayne and I, went down River Road, and anyways, we got feeling pretty good. And we get to the club, and everything is cool. He goes, yeah, we'll do this. And then after I started the promotion, he disappeared. Mm-hmm. Went to Chicago, and the number I got was a gas station.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. That sounds like some of the stories. I know that Wayne hung around this area for a while.
Yeah, I could never figure that out.
I don't know why he hung around here.
Well, I finally found out, but
yeah, okay.
Can't talk about it.
Yeah, it's probably good. Something like that. But I like I said, going back to the KMJ Band, I worked with those guys, and then we actually got to the point where we got to open for Starship one show downtown Bay City, which was kind of a cool thing because I got to meet Mickey Thomas at that time, who was kind of a hero for me. I always liked his voice. And
was that at the Friendship Shell?
No, that was across the river.
Oh, at Vets Park?
In the Vets Park area. It was for it was like a fundraiser for the fireworks.
Okay.
And we went on stage with them, and that was kind of a neat thing to do because, he was, as far as a star, he was a pretty nice guy. He was pretty easygoing and still sings well today. He's still got a great voice. So that was with KMJ Band. And then
Grace Slick wasn't there?
No.
I think most of the members of the Airplane were pretty much gone by that time.
Yeah, he had a young girl called Stephanie Calvert that was singing at that time. She has since left the group. I kind of keep in touch with her on Facebook, but they've got somebody different now. Mm-hmm. But she was a good vocalist too. She did a lot of Grace Slick's parts, and they were very good. And then I can't quite remember what happened. I ended up leaving a KMJ Band, and then got back into Soul Express, and that's where I am today. And that's been since, I'm trying to think, it's been 10 years that I've been working with Soul Express.
Wow.
And it's been a fun gig. It's been a good gig.
Well, you guys still do Word Up? That song?
Yeah, we do all those songs. The thing, it's funny because, as you mentioned earlier, with the depth of musicians anymore, a lot of us know these songs. We've been playing so long. It's just a matter like you don't even say the key. You just know the song.
Just know the tune.
You just know the tune, and so it works out. And as far as for a band like this, when we practice, it's only to work out maybe some vocal harmonies or some intricate things. And adding the 2 new horn players that we did, they were all new, so they had to be brought up to snuff with some of the older material. But it's a great band to play with. So it's funny how you look back at where you started and where you are now. And I have my own studio at my house, and I'm still writing material and trying to get my own stuff. And it's a lot easier today because of computers and DAWs that you can, digital audio workstations that you can put stuff on. So every morning I get my coffee and I just go in my own little studio bedroom and put headphones on and start playing with stuff.
Do you have
go ahead. Well, you've been playing a long time. Have you recorded? Do you have CDs?
That was my question.
Yeah. Well, actually, I don't have anything officially, but I have a bunch of demo stuff that I'm at a level where I'm going to start doing something with it. It's got to be finally. I've written probably about 15 songs that are kind of blues rock oriented, and I've been kind of. I have distractions. It's called the Soul Express Band when we get busy. And when summer comes, I have a boat, and it's boating season. Mm-hmm. So I get kind of pulled away from that stuff. But I've been making a very concerted effort this winter to get a lot of that stuff done. So at this point in time, I've got some pretty good mixes down that I'm going to try to do something with. As far as what I'm not going to go to a recording studio, or I may have CDs pressed and just play with it and just give it to people to see what they think.
All right. How about the other instruments? Are you bringing people in for drums?
Not yet. I've been using computer easy drummers and addictive drummer programs that work very well for me. They're not loops. They're basically live things you can patch and do things with on your computer. They're good. And they actually do sound pretty good, but I eventually would like to bring people in. For example, I'm playing the bass parts, but I'm not as good as Corey Ingram. So I will bring in Corey to play bass lines eventually on some of the stuff when I get to the point. Mm-hmm. And he'll do it. I mean, he's just a friend that wants to get involved with music and stuff of that nature. Vocals, I'm doing all my own vocals. Pretty much, it's just a plaything right now, but it's starting to come out. Some of the stuff's starting up. I'm kind of getting happy with it. So it's
good.
Yeah.
Did your daughter Tricia? Did she kind of stick with music? I know she was very interested in that. She
played trumpet and picked up 5-string bass and reads bass guitar music as well as she reads trumpet. I mean, I don't read guitar music. I can still read trumpet music, clef music, but I don't read guitar by staffs or by music. So she did. In fact, she played in the jazz band at Garber bass.
Right, I remember that.
Yeah, and she did a phenomenal job. She moved to Tampa, and she's living in Tampa now, and she had given up pretty much all her instruments. And I was down visiting with her about a year ago, and she said, I wish I had my bass. So I just sent it down to her with a small little amplifier that I bought her. So she's hopefully getting back into it. She said she has fun with it.
Yeah, good. It'd be cool if she could play on one of your recordings.
Exactly. I'd like to see her do something. So I guess that's the beauty of musicians today. You know, when I look at the very first recording I made was at WBCM radio. It was with what was left of Sheperd and the Flock. We did a small thing up there. My dad worked at the station for years, And Lowell Homburg was one of the people up there, and that's when they were above the building at J.C. Penney's up in that area. And we went up there with our band and made a small recording, 1-track mono. And I found that recording. I'm trying to revitalize it right now because I want to bring it back. A couple of the guys in the band want copies of it. And I'm going to try to. The thing is trying to find a tape machine that does 3 3/4 IPS is kind of hard. Inches per second. Everything is. So,
I forgot to ask you this about Sheperd and the Flock. Did you guys have any original songs?
No, we didn't. Gary.
Yeah, well, I know most bands.
Yeah.
The kids didn't want to really hear original songs. They wanted to hear you play the hits of the day that they could dance to. And that's kind of the way bands were measured. Really how good you could do the covers. Do you remember the songs you covered back in the day?
5 o'clock morning was one of them I always remember. I'm trying to think some of the other ones you had. Oh my God. We did some Hendrix tunes at one point. I'm trying to think which ones we did. Because I know Randy bought an 8-string bass because that's what Hendrix bass player used, an 8-string bass for a while. I can't remember all of them, but we did, obviously, as you said, mostly covers for other bands that would, span the time, the era that we were playing in. So.
Yeah, so you did some Jimi Hendrix leads, or was that the other guitar player?
No, the other guitar. I was just strictly a rhythm guitar player, and that's all I played was the rhythm guitar. And I don't know when I really switched over to playing lead guitar. It was just kind of metamorphosed to where I am now. I guess I just started trying stuff. Chicago, Santana, Terry Kath were an influence for me at that time.
Yeah.
Chicago in the early 70s. Terry Kath.
Back when they were CTA, right?
Exactly. And Terry
Chicago
Kath
Transit Authority
was a monster on guitar. And I thought, man, I got to play like this guy. And so I just tried to copy his licks. And I think that's when I started playing more and more lead guitar.
Oh, but you played lead in KMJ, didn't you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I was lead guitar. Yeah, from that point on, I played lead in Poor Richard's Army as well, too, which was my first attempt at a horn group. So probably after college, when I got back in 74, 73, 72, actually the blues things down in Ann Arbor introduced me to play blues, learn some blues licks, which I did. You'd learn these blues licks, and you'd say, that's kind of cool. And you'd move around, try different things. And I guess that's how my lead playing came into beat at this point.
Was there any blues player that stood out to you as somebody that you tried to emulate to a certain extent?
Michael Bloomfield.
Oh, wow.
Michael Bloomfield was my hero, the king. He was the Electric Flag. When they came out, that band, and I heard Michael Bloomfield, I thought, this cat is a blues player. And he was, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he was one of the best. So he was one of my major influences for learning the blues. B.B. King was there, but still, Michael Bloomfield, to me, was really the cool guy that seemed to me had the feel that I was looking for, as far as how to bend notes and how to sustain notes and how to put those notes together.
The fluidity.
The fluidity was phenomenal, Scott.
Yeah.
People don't realize how good he was.
The early stuff with him and Elvin and Paul Butterfield Blues Band is just so outrageous. And it's two guys that are completely different on guitar. And you could tell when one takes over for the other. There's two different versions of the blues right there. And it's a cool thing.
Yeah. No, and if you look back on his experiences, what he played, and he was just kind of like, I guess, when you see his tragic end, what happened to him, it's a sad situation for somebody like him, because he was the great white hope, so to speak, I guess, as far as the blues went.
Yeah. I just recently picked up the book that was written on him. It's called The King or something like that.
Yeah.
It's like that thick.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It's outstanding.
Yeah.
But that's enough. Did you see him play in Ann Arbor when you were there?
No, I did not see him. I never, unfortunately, had a chance to see him play.
Oh, wow. You never got a chance while you were down there?
No,
okay.
no.
Well, he was gone before you got down there, right?
Yeah.
So in 1972 in Ann Arbor, that's when I started, 71, started booking a lot of blues. And that's when I first met Steve Nardella and Johnny Nicholas.
Yeah.
Well, Steve is still probably my best friend down there. But all those guys like that, Mr. Floods, Blind Pig, Mackinac Jacks.
No, you Fred, you booked which festival? Ann Arbor
Blues and Jazz Fest.
What year?
73.
Did you?
Did you go to that?
Special Detroit show on Saturday
I didn't get a chance
afternoon.
to go to that. No.
That was my show.
Yeah. Wow. It's
Well, at that time, there was all those clubs had a lot of blues. Mm-hmm. I mean, big name Chicago blues.
Yeah.
Luther Allison.
Yeah.
Came in all the time.
Yeah.
Is there a particular moment that you were like, wow, this is in my heart. This is it. This is the tune, or a guy, or a band, or a jam. What would it have been that took it over for you?
I think it's funny because I think I have to believe that the blues is always deep there in your heart somewhere, and
But going from that, all you're playing for all those years in Beatle feels and pop music feels, what was that change that clicked in you?
well, like I said, Michael Bloomfield obviously was big, and then he would talk about.
I mean, when you were in was it playing with someone in particular, or
no, just different guys that played blues down there.
just feeling it and
local
being
guys
part of
in
it.
it just
Did you ever meet
Inspiration.
Ron Tucker,
No, I did not.
harmonica player? Well, he lived from Saginaw, but he lived in Ann Arbor during those years.
Yeah.
I was just curious if you had a particular inspiration while you were down there
No.
that turned the light on. That was like, whoa.
No, I think it just kind of gradually came, and I'm going to tell you, I played in country western bands. I worked with Michelle Spitz for a while, and it did country shows with her, but inevitably blues has always been my background, and I guess it's because it's an emotional thing. I remember my mother singing. My mother and father and you mentioned that, Gary, about my parents being musically. My mother had a great voice. My dad sang, and they both worked in the St. James minstrel shows, which they'll go.
I saw one of those, and they were probably in it, and that would have been maybe before. Well, definitely, I was quite young.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't have been a paper boy or anything of that sort. I probably didn't know your parents at that point.
Right. But at that time, there was a group of people that they hung around with, and one of the people that performed with them was an actual black lady named, and I will never forget her name. Her name was Mabel Dangerfield, and they would do their practices, and then they would come to my parents' house after, and they would drink and do more rehearsals. And I remember this Mabel, who's singing the blues a lot.
That's a good blues name.
And she was just a great blues singer. And her and my mother would sing together. And at that point, as a young kid, I still remember that. And I couldn't have been much more than 4 or 5 years old at the time. But I think, as you mentioned, Scott, when does blues really hit you? I think it's a combination. It starts to grow on you. Yeah. And there wasn't, I don't think, one person that came out, but as far as guitar playing, obviously I'm going to go back to the fact that Michael Bloomfield was my first inspiration.
Electric Flag, particularly.
Electric Flag in particular, that band.
Yeah, and you were doing Hendrix already by that time.
Exactly.
So Bloomfield just took it to another level. For
A
you.
different level. And of course, Buddy Miles was a phenomenal
It's
drummer.
the combination,
who eventually did. I mean, he worked, we worked with Carlos Santana and different things. So, and Santana was a big thing for me at that time, too. I started to hear Carlos and
John McLaughlin.
And all these.
Neil Schon,
also all this stuff came into play. So I guess I learned at one point that you can't just play one style of music. And playing, you used to go in the music stores and you would plagiarize notes and play a blues scale in a country lick. And people say, well, what is that? Well, it's just music is plagiarism. I mean, we're stealing one note from the other and from other cats that we hear. So at this point, I'm definitely like I said, I obviously Soul Express is a funk rhythm and blues band, but the blues, when there's a blues tune, that's when I'm the happiest.
I got to take it back because I didn't get a chance to ask these questions, and it just occurred to me with all this great bits of you learning all these styles. But I mean, you've played with Bobby Balderrama, Dick Wagner, all the guys in the area that have gone on to other things. Did you ever spend any personal time outside of Wagner with the amp thing, like to jam with them or to hang with them, or was there any one-on-ones back then?
No, but I tell you what, this is a good story, and this did happen, being that, and I mentioned earlier in Sheperd the Flock, Dave Shorkey, our drummer, used to fill in occasionally with Dick Wagner and the Boston when they're drumming. I think it was
Woodman.
Woodman.
Yeah.
Couldn't make it. And at that point in time, Dave had met Ted Nugent. And we used to practice at Dave's house, and Ted Nugent came to one of our practices. And at that point, he was putting the Amboy Dukes together. Mm-hmm. And I remember him, once again, he wanted to play my guitar. And here I am, a 15, 16-year-old with this guitar that I purchased with my own money. So obviously I'm a little bit nervous about another older cat playing my equipment. And he picked up my guitar and played it, and he kind of like did a whammy bar thing without a whammy on
With
it.
the neck?
With the neck.
Yeah.
And I was really upset, and I grabbed it from him. And at that time, I didn't know who Ted Nugent. Nobody really knew who Ted Nugent was at that time because he was just putting together the Amboy Dukes in Saginaw. So that was the only other experience.
What did he say?
He just looked at me and just called me a name.
Did he?
Because I was a young kid. I was like a young brother, basically kicked me to the side and just told me, just don't worry about it, kid. I mean,
Wow.
Funny stories. But living in this area.
How about Meatloaf? Any Meatloaf stories? I mean, you had Woodman and the Popcorn Blizzard guys.
Never had anything with them. No. So a lot of these things happened just because they happened, and you were just there at the time and in the music scene. And
any cool jams in Ann Arbor where you cross paths with somebody?
No, nothing at that point. Just other than local musicians.
Did you hear about the Prime Movers when you were in Ann Arbor? They were a pretty prominent blues band, probably a little earlier.
Probably a little bit earlier than.
Yeah, and then Michael Erlewine had a lot to do with at least the first few Ann Arbor blues festivals. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Did you get a chance to attend any of those?
No, I didn't.
He was a photographer. Or part of it, because he didn't. The actual person who was the head of it was a guy by the name of John Fischel.
Okay.
Because I booked Lightning Slim at it, 1970.
But I don't know. Erlewine might have taken some pictures, but the book, that picture book, is a different photographer entirely.
Stanley Livingston.
Yeah, Stanley Livingston, right.
But I'm not sure what his job was at the festival.
Well, he
could have been.
Yeah, he seemed to be there all over the place. He's got a lot of the pictures.
He's in a lot of pictures.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. Well, that's great.
For me, music was and it still is an obsession. But I had at my earlier stage in life, I had to come to a decision. I knew at one point you couldn't really stay here to do anything, so I felt I should move somewhere to New York or to LA or something. But I just was not ready for that dive, So I was in school in Ann Arbor, and I had my degree in microbiology. I'm a medical microbiologist. So I decided to I needed something that I could still play the music. So as a result, that's why I never left the area to pursue it. And sometimes I kind of look back at that and say, well, maybe I should have. But then again, you get into that era where out in LA and New York, and you get gobbled up because there's so much talent out there.
Every year is another story, another gang.
Yeah. Exactly. So I'm happy where I'm at because I'm still playing, and I'm still playing with some great guys in the area. And I met a lot of people over the years that I've made friends with or had experiences with, a lot of good memories that I we've all talked together as fellow musicians. We could probably have the best sitcom on TV if we could bring all our stories together.
Oh, for sure.
Because some of the stuff is unbelievable that we went through as far as our careers and stuff in music and together.
So in the next few years, we're definitely going to get to hear your music. Finally.
Yeah, that's my goal this year. I've been kind of lax on, but this has been what I've been really working hard on the last several months.
Well, you heard it here first on the MMHP and the 989. John Hebert's finally going to release these long lost demos that he's been writing at home all these years,
and that's a good reason now to have it out there, so I will get them out. But yes, I'm at the point of doing it.
Are these multiple styles of music or blues oriented?
They're kind of my style.
Just your thing.
It's my thing. Whatever comes to play, I'm going back into. I'm pulling out old guitars that I have, Epiphone casinos and I'm using tremolo with them and different things of that nature. And I'm trying to paint different pictures stuff that's not really out there today. And not a lot of heavy, but a lot of different, Leslie's and different things that I'm going to use. So I'm going back over my years and just try to bring all the stuff into an air. And if people like it, they do. If they don't, they don't. But I got to get them out. I got to get this stuff out of my head.
Yeah, that sounds great.
So that's
By the time this podcast runs this fall or whatever, late summer, however this falls in there, hopefully that you'll have a little web presence and a tune out or something.
I do have a website that I'm going to start posting those things on.
What's it?
It's johnwilfred.com. And I do have some cards I'll give you guys.
Well, for the listeners, John, WIL,
JOHNWILFRED. F.com.
All right.
And that actually, I use that because a lot of people that I know want to know where I'm playing.
We're going to put this up when the time comes to.
And so this is where I'm going to put some of the stuff on. And I might start putting some of the demos on soon. It's a Wix website, so it's real easy to play with and keep it up.
Cool. Well, we hope that we can get you some listeners too with this podcast, or at least you can use this podcast down the line when the release comes out.
Exactly. I
To
appreciate
tune in with it. And thank you, John, for all your years of playing. Your stories from the road are incredible. This impeccable storytelling that we've had here for over 2 years is it's grown in depth and in width, and we're getting every angle from these 60s, especially rock stories, when the rock guys come in like yourself. And then, you guys have all gone on to funk and soul and blues and country, and there's so many angles for it. And John, you were at the heart of this, and we appreciate you.
Well, thank you for having me. And you know what? You guys are doing a great thing for the area here. People really need to give you guys kudos for what's going on here. This is really good stuff that's coming out of this.
Thank you so much, man. Yeah. Thank you, John.
Yeah, it's outstanding.
The MMHP is hosted on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and our own Libsyn podcast site. You can also search MMHP989 on Facebook for up-to-the-minute information, as well as both Dr. J and Sir Fred's album picks of the week, posted every weekend. Don't forget to look for Mr. Mike's local music live series, posted frequently on MMHP's Facebook hub, as well as Scott's Mid-Mitten 15 from Harvest Canteen, featuring one-on-one interviews with Michigan music artists. You can connect with Scott on the web at scottbakermusic.com, Dr. J at michiganrockandrolllegends.com, Sir Fred at fredrife.com, Mr. Mike at YouTube at Mr. BT1. That's MRBTEE and the number 1. Brought to you by Michigan Rock and Roll Legends, located both inside the Bay County Historical Museum on Washington Avenue, as well as Scotty's Sandbar on Evergreen Drive at the Bay City Middle Grounds.
On behalf of our hosts, Dr. J, Sir Fred, Mr. Mike, and myself, this podcast wouldn't have been here without the voice of the MMHP, Mr. Eddie Switek, the generosity of the Bay County Historical Museum, which hosts the Rock and Roll Legends Hall of Fame, as well as this podcast, Mr. Alan Garcia, all of our guests, and especially to the listeners, we want to thank you.
Shortly after my dad passed away, Jay brought over some stuff from WBCM. Because my dad was a radio guy for a lot of years.
Oh, yeah. I know
he worked in radio. In fact, I worked at WBCM FM when I was in high school.
Oh, cool.
I used to go up there when Eric
When it was on Tuscola, they used to have the station. And so my dad said, well, you want a job here? He said, all you got to do is work for the 10 to 11 shift and play classic music, no announcing. So all I had to do was put records on and in a half hour do the station ID as required by the FCC and that kind of stuff. So I got my operator's license to do that and everything. And it kind of, it was kind of a fun thing. But my dad worked in back to my original story, when he passed, Jay had brought some stuff over that was from the old WBCM radio station where my dad had kicked in and used to work there a little bit. My dad was a ham for radio. He loved doing that.
How long was he on there?
I don't really know. It was probably before I was born, and then he would occasionally fill in once in a while.
So it was periodic after that.
After a certain point. Lowell Homburg was there at the time at WPCM, and he worked with him a lot. John Lipinski used to work at...
Didn't Eric Gila's father own it or something?
Could have been.
He had something to do. He was
at the studio at the Winona Hotel for a while.
Could have been. The one I remember was when I was in the
that's when I went to
Penny's
it.
building,
Yeah.
or behind the Penny's, Bay City Market now, but they had a studio up there in that building.
My grandma used to work up there when it was Penny. She had the upstairs. She did all the clothes. My grandma Baker. Yeah. She used to go to the juicy fruit machine, put a quarter in and buy it. Give me a juicy fruit every time I come visit her. Oh, I used to love going upstairs at Penny's.
It's funny how these memories come out. I do remember. You remember, Gary, the old roller rink where everybody would walk in
The roll air shuffle. Like
That was the YMCA dances too.
That's something. Tuesday night. What a great thing!
Oh, it's awesome.
What a great thing for kids.
Yeah, I feel real bad for kids today. They don't have it.
You know, the social skills that you got into and stuff. I mean, meeting people and girls.
Well, even the dancing. You know, I don't know if kids even dance today.
I don't know.
You know, they were all. You know, when we were growing up, there was always songs you could dance to.
Yeah.
Slow songs.
Didn't you say there was something on Midland Street that started?
Well, Miles Brosnowski has got something going in the basement of his art gallery, which is called it's where the original Lucky's record shop was on the original.
Oh.
That's on the first block, right across from.
Right. Yeah, that's where the Midland bookstore is.
You know, the old our door place there with the brewery.
Yeah, I think he's right next door to the bookstore.
We used to play the stables all the time with Soul Express.
Yep.
In my
I
first,
come see you guys there a lot.
Yeah, I saw you guys there
in
once.
fact, we used to do that all the time.
We come down the street. Oh man, you guys would be there, and then there'd be times where Larry would be down. But I guess Larry was before that. O'Hare's and the River Rock, because we were playing River Rock, but we go down and see you guys there on different nights.
Midland Street was a different thing.
Yeah,
well,
before the DJs.
Yeah.
And everything went different.
Although they didn't have any place that really was a great spot for bands. I mean, you know, they didn't, except for the Bonton. You know, the stage.
And I've never been in all these years I've never been
They
in.
had a great stage
They
there.
did.
You know, like
Oh, yeah.
the stable and the stables and O'Hare's. I mean, it was tight. You know, really wasn't in room. This place really had a nice stage, and I think back in the day they had orchestras.
Oh yeah, they had. It was. I have pictures in my first book.
That's where my parents met.
Oh really?
That was the place to go.
That's the sawmill, right?
Yeah,
The sawmill.
Yeah, I know that as a sawmill. Yeah.
I saw KMJ play there.
Okay.
They need to redo that place. I would love that place to come.
Yeah, my parents.
Such a great stage there.
Yeah.
You know, I have a friend
pretty
from
cool
Saginaw
place.
that he says he was in the KMJ band as a guitar player. Steve Schrage.
Well, now that I don't know.
So no one seems to know who he is. And I'm
Bob
thinking,
Charleboy. Bob says. Well, in fact, I worked with Bob's band, Bluesmobile, 6 times this past summer, and he said I was the longest lasting guitar player in KMJ. So I don't know if I should take that as a compliment
Maybe he was in
or
chorus,
stupidity.
I
I don't know.
At Mako's memorial, I was talking to Vinny, and I'm just talking about Mako. Yeah, Mako never had a bad thing to say about anybody. No. He said, "Oh, just a few of the guitar players."
That was an exciting, different band for me to be in.
Yeah,
Great band though. I mean, but good guys and.
I only saw the KMJ band at one time with Wayne Bennett, and the only thing I could remember, and I guess it was Vinny, some guy from stage kept spitting on the audience. And I thought, who the fuck is this guy?
Yeah.
And that was Vinny.
Yeah.
Well,
See, I never got to know those guys. I know of them, but I never got to know those guys. Believe it or not.
Unusual things. It was always a treat to see what was going to happen with Vinny. Working at the hospital at the time, and I had lunch every day with Bob Holmes, the heart thoracic surgeon. And he started saying, "Man, you've been looking really peaked lately." I said, "Well, I'm 53. I mean, this happens."
Yeah.
And I couldn't throw the ball well to Chris, my son, anymore. I thought, well, you know what the hell. And got me in a series of tests, and immediately I had I had to have a triple bypass within 2 days.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I was totally asymptomatic. Had Tom Burke was alive at that time. He came up to see me from ER. He looked at my chart, and the blockage it was 99% blockage, and I was underweight. Never but my cholesterol was sky high. And I hadn't been to a doctor in 20 years. Bad thing. Tom Burke said if I had the heart attack there's been no revival.
Wow.
I mean, so that's some scary shit when you think of it.
Oh yeah.
I mean, thank God I was working at the hospital because if I was digging ditches, I probably would have,
Or working at any other job where you're talking to somebody that wouldn't have noticed something about you.
I tell you, my outcome was, I'll never forget the day I was playing with KMJ Band. And we had a gig at the Arlington that weekend. I got admitted to the hospital on Thursday night after the heart cath. Bob Holmes came in and said, well, things look, you're going to have to work. We do surgery now, but we got to wait till Monday, long story short. I said, well, Bob, I'm supposed to do a gig this weekend. Is there any way you can let me out? He said, are you nuts? He said, I'd lose my license if something were going to happen. I said, so I had to call Vinny and Bob Charleboy.
Dead on the stage in the Arlington.
Vinny would have loved it.
You would have been legendary, John.
My God.
They probably would have the chalk mark, permanently on the stage.
Vinny would have had pictures taken with